this model railroading for beginners, I'm going to show you how to do your terrain with plaster of Paris and everything that it takes to get to that point. I'm Tom Kovichak, and this is Tom's Trains and Things. I do this model railroading for beginners to show you how to get your model railroad up and running from start to finish, from the very beginning. If you don't know anything about model railroading, this is the place to come to see all the videos in this series of model railroading for beginners. So let's get started with this right now. This method of forming your terrain has been in existence and being used for decades. I've made a couple of changes on a few of the materials, but it's all basically the same. Modelers used to use chicken wire or screen, you know, that you have on your screen doors or on your screened-in porch, and paper towel and plaster, and maybe plaster of Paris or even regular plaster. That was a long time ago. Right now we're going to form everything with, and you could tell this is from a diet soda box. This is a little bit easier to use than the cardboard box that is about that thick. Now, grant you, it does work, but I like to use this because I have a lot of these right here. We're going to use plaster of Paris, and we're also going to use plaster cloth. Now, there's a lot of different places where you can get plaster cloth. You can get it at any arts and crafts store, Michael's, Joann's, Hobby Lobby, AC Moore, whatever you have in your area, you can get it there. You can also get it online. And the plaster of Paris, same thing. In fact, you could even get that at hardware stores, the plaster of Paris. But all the arts and crafts store has the plaster of Paris also. Now, there is an alternate method of the plaster of Paris with hydrocal. Hydrocal is a little bit more expensive, and I usually use that for doing molds, and that'll be in a different video. So we're not going to talk about the hydrocal at this time. We're just going to use these cardboard strips. We're going to use plaster cloth, and we're going to use plaster of Paris. Now, this method can be used on a completely blank slate of your layout, or even if you have scenery and you have to do some patching someplace, or you're adding something. It just takes a little bit more preparation when you're doing it over top of what I will be showing you on this video, because obviously I already have my layout finished. I have an area right over here where I'm working on, and I'm going to be showing you how I do it in that area right there, where I have existing scenery, I have the tracks laid, and I'm going to be adding some more terrain to the layout because I made some changes on it. A good idea is, even if you have nothing on there yet, lay your tracks first. Then you could work from there. And the best thing to do is, when your tracks are laid, then cover it with painter's tape, and then work on your scenery after that. Now, you'll be able to see that here. I run this in here so I make sure the clearance is good. I also put the NMRA gauge over here to make sure that we have the clearance on the side right there, and you can see we just barely make it right there. So we're good to go with that part right there. Whenever you're planning your terrain around your track, make sure you give yourself enough clearance, and the best way to do that is put your NMRA gauge on there just to give you a visual representation of where you need that terrain. Say if you're putting up mountains or if you're putting cliffs in there, you're going to want to give yourself enough space in there for the cardboard, for the plaster cloth and the plaster, or the rock molds. The rock molds are going to take up a little bit more, so you may have to make sure that your foundation with the cardboard is a little bit further out So just take that into consideration because you have the thickness there, and you want to make sure that your cars clear the terrain, because you don't want to be going back and having the cars hitting it, and you're going to have to scrape it off after you already finished it. Another good thing to do is, once you have it in place and before you add your dirt and bushes and trees and everything else, run a train through there to see how the clearance is. And if you have to make any adjustments, then do it then before you get any further in the process. I'm starting this off by marking the base right here. I'm going to put a piece right here with the hot glue gun. I'm just going to mark this so I know about where to put the glue. Okay, it's hot. Right. So I'll just stick this right up here like that. That'll give me something to go right here, and then I'll let this dry a little bit or cool off a little bit, and then I'll stick it down here. Put some glue right here. Dab over here for this one, so we could come down like this. Put a dab over here. We'll just put a dab on each one of these. Put that across. So there we go. That's it. That's the first part of it, and you get the idea. I got this far with the strips, and I used up all the strips that I already cut. So it's about time to cut another box and make me some more strips. Right here is the lift out section. So I'm leaving this loose up on the top. And I got this going all the way back here. And I got all this filled in over here. So I think I'm about ready. In this project, I'm going to use this right here. It's called Paris Craft. And it's about half the length of what you normally get, like the woodland scenic stuff. And I got this at AC Moore. I got this, and I used this on the rest of it because I ran out of it. But anyway, this was from Hobby Lobby. It normally goes for $11.99. I got it for $4.31. And here's the other brand that I was using. And I usually get this at either Joann's or Michael's. This is the brand that they cover. And I'm not sure if they got this at AC Moore. Now for the following steps, you could use those latex gloves or the nitrile gloves. I choose not to cover my hands because I can't feel what I'm doing when I have those gloves on. But that's up to you what you want to do on there. Right here is a nice good length to work with. But you have to be careful, because one time I got this stuff that was not the same consistency of this. You could see that this one has some big holes in it. But I at one time got some stuff that looked like cheesecloth, and it was very hard to work with. I'm not going to show you the whole process of me doing this whole area, but you just take this and dip it in the water. And what I like to do is just take some of the water off. And what it actually does when you do that, it actually fills in some of the holes in there too. So I'm going to start over here on this edge. Oops, that wasn't supposed to be there. Okay. I put it on, and I try to rub it a little bit, and what that does is fill in some of the holes. And I'm going to be going over this with Plaster of Paris also. So, but I just like to cover up the holes on there. It makes it look nicer when I'm doing it. But you don't have to do it in any specific way of, you know, starting at the top or work your way down, or start at the bottom, whatever's easiest for you to do. And I just try to keep it as smooth as I can, because if I need any texture in it, I'm going to get that texture when I put the plaster of Paris on there. If you're working on some plaster cloth that's already dried up, I would just go over it and just brush it with a little bit of water before you put the new stuff on. That way it tends to stick better. Now I'm going to put this all the way up to there. Since this right over here is a lift out, I put as much plaster cloth as I could, as far as I could reach anyway, up there, so it will maintain the contour when I lift that piece out, because I have to go back in there, stand in there, to finish the rest of this plaster cloth right here. There may be times that you have scenery already on your layout and you're going to put additional scenery on there. Now, if you're starting from scratch, you're not going to run into this problem unless you lay down your tracks. And what I do is I use painter's tape for on the track. And I'll show you some video of that a little bit later. But I'm going to talk about scenery that I already have there. Like I have that tunnel portal right there, and I'm getting ready to put the plaster of Paris down. But I don't want to get anything on that tunnel portal, but I want to be able to get straight up against it. Now I've done this in other areas where I had a lift out area, and I wanted to have rocks coming down into a water. So I'll show you how I did that with this right here. Cling wrap. It doesn't have to be the cling wrap, but any kind of clear plastic wrap. You just wrap whatever you don't want the plaster of Paris to get on, and then you put it in place where you want it on your layout, and then you do your plaster of Paris. And then when you're finished with it, when the plaster of Paris dries, you can take out the scenery, like I'm going to show you how to do it on the tunnel portal. You take it out and then just remove the cling wrap from there and put your tunnel portal back in place. It's as easy as that. It saves you a lot of aggravation, and it saves you from trying to get the plaster of Paris off of pieces of scenery that you don't want the plaster of Paris on. This is the area right here that I'm talking about, and as you can see, I have the plaster cloth right up to it, but I want to put plaster of Paris all the way up to the retaining wall. And I have it right here, and I have the cling wrap on it, and I draped it over on both sides. So you want to make sure that every part that you want covered up is actually covered. And I'm going to go heavy on this side here, because this is the side that I'm going to do the plastering on. As you're putting the plaster of Paris down, it'll push up against this, and it'll actually go up into the grooves in here. Now you could do this wherever you have water. You could even take a pitcher of water, like a Pyrex 4-cup thing, and do it anywhere, even closer to your layout. But what I do is I come in the bathroom and do this. And it makes it a lot easier. And the bathroom is just a few steps away from the layout. But what I use here is plaster of Paris. It's the DAP plaster of Paris. But you use 2 parts of the plaster of Paris to 1 part of water. And we use these spatulas here. I'm going to use the small spatula this time, because I'm going into tighter spots. But I have some vinegar in there, and what you want to do is use vinegar on it to increase the time that it takes to set up. That gives you more time to play with it. And all I do is put a couple of drops in there. I put that in there first, and that was a couple of drops, and then I'll See if I can get that in the camera, what it looks like. Just a little bit on the bottom there. And then I take a half a cup of water. And just pour it in there. And it mix up a little bit with the vinegar. And then I take 1 cup of the Plaster of Paris. And depending on how old it is, this Plaster of Paris is probably 2 years old, at least 2 years old, because I know I haven't done any scenery on this layout for about 2 years. I'm going to make sure it is packed. Okay, and what you just do is tap it in, and I'm not going to do it right now because I have the camera right here, and I'm going to have to run with this and the camera into the other room. So I'm just going to leave it at that right there. But you just go in there and tap it in there and just mix it up until you got the consistency that you want. And when I get out there, I'll show you the consistency that it is. Now I had to add a couple of more tablespoons of Plaster of Paris to this mixture just to get it to thicken up some. It's still quite thin, and that's the way I want it, so it'll go smoothly on here. And you just put it in the areas that you want it, and I'm not worried about getting it up in on this scenery here. And it'll come out pretty smooth like this. And I want to be able to work with it later on, so if I wanted to be carving anything, I'd make it a little bit thicker. And it's runny enough that you can get it into spots that if it was too thick, you'd never be able to do that. Let's see, this will actually get close to the existing scenery right there. And this is all going to be covered up with dirt and bushes, so you can make it look exactly like you want it to. This is all I got left in there, and I'll just scrape that out and clean it up. Now this thing cleans up pretty easily if you don't let it get too hard. As you can see right there, it leaves nothing in there. It's still a little bit wet. But you just take warm water and go in there, and if you have any little pieces where the Plaster of Paris still sticks on it, as you can see, there's some little ones in there. I don't know if you can see it, but you can go in there with your thumbnail or fingernail and just scrape it right off, and it comes right off. This is a pliable rubber. It's really thick. I think I got this at Micromark, but it's real easy cleanup. But make sure you do it when it's still fresh. If you wait too long, it's going to get really hard, and it's just going to make it more difficult to clean up. A lot of people, when they do this, they have a partner. So if they're doing larger areas, they'll have one person mixing and one person spreading it. And then while the person is spreading it, the second person can make up another batch, and when they're finished, they hand off the dirty one, and get the full one, start plastering some more, and the other person cleans this up and does another batch until they're finished with it. That's if you're doing large areas like that when you're starting out on your layout. It's good to have somebody to work with to do that with you. We have many videos of model railroading for beginners that you can access in the playlist of model railroading for beginners on my YouTube channel. So take a look at the rest of them on there. We'll have some more on this subject here. We're going to go a little bit further with that. I'm going to show you how to do rock molds, and I'm going to show you how to put the texture on top of that. But we're going to have to paint it and then put our dirt and shrubs and static grass and trees on there to make it look like an actual hillside and whatever we want to make it look like. So until the next time, we'll see you.